Hi, good evening everyone. This is Prasad Yadav. Now, in this video, we'll be discussing about first nationalization of banks in 1969. So, this is first nationalization of banks in 1969. So, actually, there are number of reasons for nationalization of banks in 1969. We'll discuss how many banks were nationalized, what are they in later stages. First of all, what are the reasons for nationalization of these banks? From 1947 to 1969, there is only one public sector bank, that is State Bank of India, or State Bank of India group is there. As it is a public sector bank, the people are having faith on it and they used to deposit their money in this group or in this bank. But whatever the other banks are there, for example, you have number of banks at this time. 14 banks were nationalized, but actually more number of private banks were there. As they are private banks, people are not having enough faith in these banks. So whatever the household savings were there, whatever the savings were there, they were very low in banking sector actually. So whatever the savings component is there, which is very crucial for any economy, the savings component in banks is very essential thing for the development of any economy. If you see the money multiplier concept, you can easily understand what is the significance of the money present in banking system. So as all banks are private banks, people are not having enough faith on those banks, so that's why no deposits in those banks. And one more thing, whatever the private banks are there, huge black money was accumulated in those banks and the government is unable to control those banks, particularly under RBI norms. They do not come under the control of either RBI or the government of India. So one more reason is huge accumulation of black money in those banks. And the next thing is, whatever the money is there, it is not utilized for rural credit structure, that means for agricultural loans or rural development. Huge amounts of money stuck in private banks. And for the establishment of SMEs and MSME segment also, no proper loan structure is there from private banks. So based on all these reasons, you have only SBI or SBI group as a public sector bank. Based on that one, savings component is very low and huge accumulation of black money is there in the mind of the policymakers. In rural credit also, as all these banks are private banks, the rural credit structure is also, rural credit base is also very low. And these banks, these private banks are not supporting small scale industries, and they are not they are not supporting SMEs and MSMEs. So based on all these reasons, the government is forced to go for nationalization of banks, and 14 banks were nationalized in this period in 1969. So actually, when the then Prime Minister Srimati Indira Gandhi has thought about all these things, she immediately went to President of India, and through President she made an ordinance. Through ordinance, first nationalization of banks was done. So that is very important in examination point of view, because whatever the nationalization of banking is there, it is not done through the parliament in the beginning. It is first done through an ordinance released by the president, then it is made into an act actually. So then it is officially came through the parliament. You can call it as a delegated legislation also, or subordinate legislation also, or executive legislation made by the executive. So again, I'm coming back to this topic. There are number of reasons behind first nationalization of banks. In first nationalization of banks, 14 banks were nationalized, and first nationalization of banks was done in 1969. There are number of reasons behind first nationalization of banking, like the segment of public sector banks is not very low. There is only one bank, that is SBI is only there, and based on that there is no faith of people on these private banks, so saving component is very low. Whenever the saving component is very low, money flow will be very less in money markets. If more money is there banking system, more money flows in money markets. If more money is there in money markets, more industrialization possibility will be there, more employment will be there, so impact of inflation will be less. If more employment will be there, then impact of inflation will be less on the people. So one topic is related to another topic. So savings component is very low, huge accumulation of black money in private banks because of no proper monitoring, and rural credit structure is also very low. Whatever the support they can give for SMEs and MSMEs, the private banks are not interested in giving such kind of support. So based on all these factors, 14 banks were nationalized in 1969. In my next video, I'll take 2 to 3 minutes to explain what are the 14 banks which were nationalized in 1969. Thank you.